Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Everyone who reads must converse is the channel. We got Dario from Motley Reads in the house. Tom LA Books in the house. Hey guys, how are you?
I know I'm
Very well, thanks. So many different time zones in just this people.
That's right. It's a happy Saturday afternoon. It's about 5 p.m. for me. Dario's staying up late to talk to us.
yes,
And
11 p.m. here in Stockholm region. Yeah.
nice. And Tom, you just had your dinner. Or you just had your lunch.
Lunch, exactly.
Yeah.
Very cool. So this is a second part to a discussion that we're doing through maybe Midrash here, called Science and Faith is what it's kind of exploring. The Science and Faith adaptation that Tom had done of a novel. We're using it loosely to enter into a dialogue. We had one video already. It's linked in the description box if you're not familiar. But what we went through with that one was more a kind of an exploration of the assumptions or misconceptions about science and faith being completely at odds. Is that safe or fair to say?
Absolutely.
And then and through our discussion, what we got through, especially listening to some of the things that Dario threw in on it, and how we just kind of explored it, I saw that we were pretty much showing that science and spirituality are coming from different places within the human being as far as how they're questioning, what kind of questions they're asking of reality or of themselves, and that science is more of a how kind of question in reference to what we see and physically and how things work, wanting to know how it can work and how it could work better or whatever it is. And then that spirituality is more of a why type question. And it's definitely more a maybe a self-referential question, if not referencing humanity as a whole and just being like, well, why then? What is the purpose of this? What are we doing here? What is there a meaning kind of thing? And so science approaches more of this philosophical questioning inquiry. Science or spirituality approaches more of the philosophical inquiry. Science is more of a method unto itself, right? You guys want to say anything about the first discussion that might kind of just get us right where we want to be to start this one off?
We said the last time, maybe it was Dario, I don't remember, but we talked about the different dimensions, right? The like you said, science and faith or science and spirituality belong to different dimensions, and I think it's a good way to put it, because we as human beings are able to fine tune ourselves to different dimensions, not only one, right?
Right.
And historically, this seems to have always been very clear in history, except for the last maybe 200 years, where there's been a narrowing into this scientific field. And for some people in the culture, there's to be the impression that the only avenue to truth, to understand truth and to gain knowledge. And our contention is that it's a mistake.
I think that's fair. And definitely something that I feel myself when I think about scientific exploration, that it's totally valid and something that is just a part of what we do now. And obviously there's a lot of fruit that has come from it as far as technology and things that we can do. But is it the whole picture? No way. So what does that mean? Dario, you got anything to throw in before we jump in?
Well, it's. I think we have jumped in already, huh? Yeah. I've been thinking quite a lot about our discussion there that we had, and it is very much that we are. It is. We've been talking about when you observe the world, try to do different types of observations through either empirical experiments or through logical exercises or whatever. You're doing a number of approximations basically that all together are creating the full picture of the universe we live in all dimensions of it. And some of these approximations you're doing in the realm of science, and some of them you are doing in the spiritual realm. So these we talking about that these are different perspectives, are in two different domains, and you can see it as a part of the same domain as well. We've been chatting a little bit on a Voxer about that, and you had this idea of how and why, basically where science is asking the question how, and religion is asking the question why, and that is kind of suggesting two different approaches in exploring two different domains. You can also see it like this. You can see it in the same domain as well. I'm thinking of, if you look at when you do in engineering design, for instance, when you are developing a technical system, you you have a certain functional requirement. You want something to do something, right? So let's take a simple example. Like I would like to be able to dispense water in my house, right? So this is the functional requirement. And then, the solution to that functional requirement would be I need the water faucet, right? Okay. So so that water faucet, how do I decompose this? How do I create this water faucet? What are the sub-requirements I need to fulfill? Okay, that I will need to dispense a certain flow that will need to regulate the flow of water. That would be one requirement. Another requirement would be I need to regulate the temperature of that water. Okay, so these are the sub-functions to these, major function of dispensing the water. Okay, then the solutions for these sub-functions would be parts of this technical system, parts of the faucet system, right? And then you're breaking it down. You're going, zigzagging back and forth between functions and solution and creating this. So you're all of the time asking the question, okay, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do you do? You're getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, let's see. We have a system there. So you are approaching there, you're seeing it for the first time, and then thinking, okay, what is this? Okay. So I take a component, I take a screw in a faucet. So why do I have this here? Okay. And then you are basically looking back into functional requirement. Okay, what is the functional requirement for this? And then basically you're zigzagging back through the structure until you have come to the top and say, aha, okay, I have this actually to dispense water, right? Mm-hmm. So this is then you're doing analysis of a ready technical system. So now we live in a technical system that is, designed. I'm not saying that there is a God that made the drawing, but it's right. Clearly, it's working. And
differentiating from some intelligent design idea, but it obviously has an order.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing I see it like this. I see it as a huge technical system. We are in the middle of it, and we are digging deeper down into it by asking the question how, but asking question why, it's bringing us on a higher levels of hierarchy where basically the creator is. Yes. And the creator's intent is. So I would say that then religion is moving us from where we are right now upwards in understanding the rationale behind behind our being here, while science is basically we are digging with it deeper into the system. So then we are basically in the same domain. And what I'm trying to say here, it might be actually possible to join these two forces together and to find a way actually through the logical analysis try to understand more than we understand now. And this is, I was thinking about that, and then I thought about I have actually quite interesting work on that on that theme, and is this one. Let's see. Richard Feynman. You know Richard Feynman?
Yes.
He's a physicist.
He's a physicist.
Yeah, he's a physicist. He was a physicist. He was working. I think it was on UCLA or on Stanford. I think it's UCLA. Huge guy. He's been, part of he was working in Los Alamos as well with all these, secret, DARPA projects and all that kind of stuff. And this is a collection of short works by him. Very, very smart guy. And there is one essay here. It's called The Relation of Science and Religion, where he is talking kind of a thing of a religion having. Let me see. It's damn it. The religion. It's having different aspects, 3 aspects basically: metaphysical aspect of religion, ethical aspect of religion, and inspirational aspect of religion. Where he is basically, the metaphysical aspect is concerned with what God is, the properties of God, and so on. Then you have an ethical, basically quite easy to understand, and also inspirational, which is basically motivating us to do these, good deeds in accordance with the ethical rules, in order to be a part of the kind of divine unity, so to say. And these, three aspects of religion, they are interrelated. The metaphysical aspect of religion, in his opinion, is a conflict with the science, because they are working in the same domain, science and metaphysical aspect of religion. So that's where the conflict comes, and then it's basically that since the 3 aspects of religion are interrelated, this conflict with science is breaking the religion altogether, and that's why basically,
very interesting, Dario.
Yeah,
very, very interesting stuff. And talk about we're already deep. I guess you're.
I told you.
Showing us that. Go ahead, Tom. I know you're.
And just look how this is our picture of booktubers. You cannot talk for more than 1 minute without promoting a book or selling a book. That's beautiful.
Exactly right.
Beautiful. It's interesting. I love what Dario said, especially 2 quick points. The first one about the going up in a vertical sense, which I love. And I know that, Noah, you don't particularly like the word religion, so we use spirituality, we can use faith, but really we are actually talking about very broadly the same thing, which is
right,
our aspiration for transcendence, right? And it's so interesting that it has to do with the example that Dario brought, which is the moment when the engineer kind of is working on something and then lifts his head, right, and looks up and say, "Oh, actually now I need to remember why I'm doing all this," because otherwise you forget, because there's so many things to do and problems to solve. It's always been human nature, I think, all throughout history, this moment of looking up to the stars and wonder, right? And it's beautiful because it gives birth to our transcendence, to our spirituality, to our religion, whatever you wanna call it. We the point that Feynman is making about metaphysics being in conflict with science because they try to talk about the same domain, or at least there is an overlap, is arguable, right? And I'm, from my point of view, I see it as very much about technology. What would one mean when you say that that 2 disciplines are overlapping in the same domain? If you're talking about the spiritual inclination of human beings, or the spiritual or religious instinct, whatever you call it, then there's probably room to integrate the 2. Then there are maybe some specific examples of where some part of transcendence are specifically talking about aspects that might overlap and therefore conflict, in somebody's opinion, with science. Is that my reading correct, Dario? Am I going in the right direction here?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I believe that at least that we are on the same page. So whether we are in the right direction, I don't know. But
Well, I would say, I mean, that,
we might be in the same illusion. I don't know.
right. I would say, like, if in this kind of reductionist way of trying to figure things out, where we're looking at a certain aspects of life and reality and trying to figure them out, and then when there's overlap, whether it be with the consciousness, like the consciousness from a psychological standpoint to a biological standpoint, there's overlaps with that. What motivates you to feel a certain kind of way and behave, but also biological processes that foster that, dictate that. Sometimes maybe you're not as in control as you think you are with just pure feeling motivation. Maybe there's a biological aspect that has some control, or a biological thing that might be not exactly on an even keel or something like that. Well, which one is one more in control than the other? I don't think that, that kind of, but that's the kind of argument that you kind of get into when you talk about spirituality and science, or physics and metaphysics more pointedly. And I think that if there is overlap, that it is a call that there must be a more integrated idea of what's going on there rather than what we have currently. That is just a red flag of that kind of thing is needed. More information needed. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of pitfalls to fall into in this kind of discussion, a lot of pitfalls that humanity has fallen into, not just recently in the last couple hundred years, but you made a great point with that, Dario, as far as trying, that a lot of people are stuck on one viewpoint. And I would bring up something. The first point that we were talking about pointing at is something about calling out what is fundamentalism, and in what ways has that shaped this dialogue for conceivably many hundreds of years, right? Fundamentalism is a literal interpretation of scripture, to put it, just kind of simply. And there's a lot of other aspects that we can explore about that, but that is something that is thrown out because there's not many, fundamentalists nowadays are more fringe, I would say. That the mainstream of spiritual thinkers are not fundamentalists. Yet, if a scientific materialist is bringing up the conversation, how they characterize religion is its most fundamental aspects a lot of times. So, what do you think about that? How do we want to maybe enter into that?
I think that fundamentalism definitely plays a very important role in the both creation and continuous maintenance of this conflict that really doesn't have to be there, because you can explore this question in the same way as we are exploring it, but historically when people have tried to explore it in this way, they've been pushed by fundamentalist views of other people, and here I'm come to think of Einstein, for instance. He was and you talk about Einstein here in your book, Tom, about his religious views. He's been kind of he's been speculating very much and exploring the Spinoza's pantheistic view on the world, and really not having an attitude of uncertainty when it comes to spiritual questions, having really respect for the creation as a whole and all the mystique behind it. So he was trying to explore that, but he was immediately pushed by everybody. He was pushed by the scientists as not being purist in his view, but he was also pushed by clergy. There is I found in a book, Walter Isaacson biography of Einstein. There is, I just now the genie is out. So there is this the Cardinal Boston Cardinal William Henry O'Connell said that the result of the doubt and the foggy speculations about time and the room is just a cover that hides the scary atheism, right? And then so when he, as soon as Einstein is coming in with this kind of attitude of uncertainty, then he is kind of accused of being atheist. On the other hand, then you have the atheists themselves, both scientists and non-scientists. And by the way, among the scientists, I would say I haven't seen the statistics, but it wouldn't surprise me if at least 50% of scientists were not identifying themselves as atheists. Atheists themselves from what I'm seeing in both on YouTube and in readings and everywhere, very often take fundamentalist stand, like there is nothing like it's only material world, only science. Give me the data, give me the facts, blah blah blah.
Right.
That kind of.
Go ahead.
How can you empirically prove that? Right. That's the question.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, okay, how is that attitude different from really being from a religious fundamentalist? So it's really it's polarizing this whole discourse, and it's not opening at all any room for discussion, any room for any uncertainty, because you cannot in the views of both religious fundamentalists and fundamentalistic atheists, there is no room for uncertainty. They are both very certain about their views, and that's
right.
really not helping us.
Yeah. That's beautiful, and exactly what I kind of personally felt and like wanting to get at is that fundamentalism is a term that has spiritual or religious connotations because it is used most often in that way, but fundamentalism is that kind of staunch certainty that you're pointing to there, and it's disruptive for dialogue and discourse all in any way that it's employed. I'm reminded of Flannery O'Connor's quote that doubt is not the enemy of the spiritual life. Certainty is. That doubt is not our problem. We don't. There's never been any problem with asking questions. There's never been any problem with doubting and then searching and seeking and being a spiritual seeker. But being certain on a point and planting your flag, then you end conversation, you end growth at that point. And I say never, but of course everybody, anybody can point to a certain time in history, the Inquisition or something, where there was a problem with asking questions. But I mean in individuals that are spiritual seekers, and these kind of things that end explorations are manifestations of that fundamentalist attitude, that fundamentalist way of approaching the spiritual life. It's very interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's like you say, Noah, the approach. That's a good word to jump off from, because the approach is, and the dialogue, it seems to be the entire point sometimes when that makes or breaks a conversation between somebody who is a believer or a religious person and somebody who's an atheist. There can be a great conversation there. There can be, as long as the approach is the right one, as long as the approach is an open one, of dialogue, and as long as there's no fundamentalism that can be on either side. That goes to, if you take the scientific or literal approach to everything that, or every religious doctrine or religious kind of structure, then you will never, first of all, you will never get to the core of that doctrine, because Joseph Ratzinger, for example, he said, if you are following God only through a series of logical thoughts, you will never meet God. It's much broader than that. You need to find that more open and broader approach. But if you do that, then you encounter necessarily the objections like, oh, actually, I've seen that this particular detail in this particular doctrine doesn't really make logical sense if I follow it to the very rationalistic end. And so I'm going to discard everything and throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Right. And I see things like that, points like that, that you're not talking on a specific point, but points that make you think, that contradict each other, that bring in to bear on your consciousness paradox and things that don't add up. That is exactly the point. What we're supposed to work with, and that's how we expand ourselves beyond where we're at right now. That's the spiritual life. That's spiritual growth. Christy had asked, because she is in the chat. Hey, Christy, I hope you're feeling better. For sure. She asked if we can define fundamentalism, and I tried with the kind of thing that is a very literal stance of religious fundamentalism would be to take scripture very literal at face value and ban any kind of questioning of that. Very staunch in your approach to that kind of thing. Scientific fundamentalism might be taking the model for the reality and not allowing any kind of questioning or any kind of movement from what is a model. It's taking the letter and discarding the spirit of the letter. And in science, it would be taking the model and discarding that the model is pointing to a bigger reality.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, so I would try and take a stab at scientific fundamentalism. Say that, generally speaking, I see it as an interpretation of reality, where truth means scientific truth. That's a simple way to look at it. There is a term that is scientism, which means you cannot see anything true outside of anything that is empirically proven. Very simply, this comes down to, what do you mean by truth? And if somebody says to me, truth is anything that you can prove, then your view is not wrong, but it's limited. It's not wrong, but it's limited. You have much more potential than that. You have much more, as a human being, you have much more potential to go beyond whatever can be empirically proven. And that's, in my opinion, the scientific fundamentalism.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that what we're pointing at is, in the first discussion and now, is we're striving for a conversation that expands, and it requires that the individuals that are in that place be in a place where they want to understand more. They don't want to prove their point, and they don't want to sit and argue a point. Somebody's right, somebody's wrong before they open their mouth. It is about really it's understanding more What do you think, Dario? Before we kind of jump into some more,
Uh,
I mean, there's more, guys.
Definitely. I want to complement two things. Want to complement the definition of fundamentalism and make a smirky comment. And the definition of fundamental, I would complement it with that there is always an element of hostile attitude towards different opinion,
Right.
and in bullying of people that are a different opinion.
Right, on both sides of this. I mean, historically, it comes from maybe a religious side more than a scientific side, because modern day is more scientific, but the scientific materialists have no doubt that kind of stance with regards to religion more openly, but spirituality very broadly as well. And I think it points to something that we had said, that people, regardless of who you are, people depart on the leader, whether that be somebody who wrote a book, is on TV, Joel Osteen, or Neil deGrasse Tyson, or Stephen Hawking, or Gandhi, or whatever. They impart on them a degree of infallibility that is because they're speaking to something that they believe in, and they it's just a natural human tendency to say that guy, because you resonate with it, to say that's right, that's true, somebody's finally saying it. When anybody can preach to the choir, right? Anybody can do that. The real thing that we want to do is to be able to talk to a broad spectrum of people who believe all different kinds of ways and have useful dialogue. But just to stay on that point of everybody kind of imparts a degree of infallibility to somebody who's saying something that they believe in, and everybody nobody has the highest truth here. Nobody there is speaking, the all-encompassing highest truth that is just that is infallible. Everybody is human beings, from the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church, from Pope to bishops and archbishops, all this kind of thing. The scientists themselves, and all across the board, we're talking about human beings who might be trying their best sometimes to find truth and to expound truth. We might be talking and pointing to figureheads, marketers, people that are just saying what is a narrative that wants to be pushed, or we might be talking about people that are actively antagonistic to a dialogue that is what we're talking about having. Somebody like Christopher Hitchens or something, right? So when it comes down to it, what do you think about that, especially personally? Because there is this tendency to gravitate towards people who expound, kind of lead the charge in dialogue with what you already have chosen that you believe.
No, but it is very. We are all humans, and we are basically limited by the capabilities that the human mind has, and also limited by a certain place in time and space, right? That we are currently in. And this, you've been talking about here, Tommy. We're mentioning proof. That that you need to have a proof to be scientifically correct. And this is, also you have this paradigm of using mathematics in science, and everything that you can show in a mathematic model, it's truth. And so the whole theoretical physics, for instance, now they cannot experimentally show things anymore, because it's just practically almost impossible, and for many different reasons, to build larger and larger accelerators. So they are building mathematical models that are building on each other, and still, although there is no really proof by experiment, because it is you can build a mathematical model is determined as proof, and you just are just waiting for somebody to build a mathematical model of Christianity, and then because you can, and the thing is, I remember from my scientific career, we had in the domain where I was working, we'd be building models, information models, using ontologies. And we had, quite lots of discussion, especially with American academics mostly from MIT and Cornell, who are very much into maths, right? So if you cannot build it in math, then it's not truth. And basically, and we had this discussion. Okay, but listen, this is just modeling language. You are using this modeling language, you use that modeling language. And then at the end, you build, okay, then we build our ontologies in discrete mathematics, and then it's, oh, okay, now I get it. But so does it make it more truth or not? And all that, these fashions, they are set by these head figures. Also in a scientific domain, there are always these guys. Typically, 99% of cases is guys who are, the leading the troops, who have all the answers, who have published the book, who have done this, who have done that, and then everybody is just in the following, and that's a part of a paradigm. So it is very much as you are saying, Noah, and it has always been, through history, it always be, because we are. How do you call it in English? Pack,
Right.
Like,
well, I mean, and I didn't say just this one thing, but we had said it on our Voxer. It's just this, like the everyday person. The everyday person practices very little by way of spiritual practice, even if they are religious. Even if they claim that they are a whatever tradition, Christian, Buddhist, whatever, they practice very little. But also the normal day-to-day scientific materialist is no scientist, and probably doesn't do any math at all on their day-to-day.
No.
You see what I'm saying? And
most of them don't.
It's the lowering of these kind of concepts that we want to talk about, but what they've done is is everything has to fall down to a common denominator.
Yeah.
And that conversation can't happen when the people that everybody that is going to say something to you pretty much is somebody who has made their mind up about something that they don't really understand.
Yeah, it's I feel like we have spoken a little too long without mentioning a book, so I need to mention a book now. Sorry, guys.
Bring it. Bring it, baby.
I'm going back to Dario's comment about the mathematics as a language, because they reminded me very strikingly about Douglas Hofstadter. Douglas Hofstadter, he wrote a couple of books about theoretical mathematics, but in particular, this one that I'm thinking of is called "I Am a Strange Loop." I Am a Strange Loop. And
Douglas R. Hofstadter?
Yes.
Yeah. He's amazing. Amazing, right?
It's fascinating because, very simply, it talks about, oh, look at that. Yeah, Douglas Hofstadter, Gödel, Escher, and Bach. That's the maybe the previous or the immediately following one. But really, the point that he's making is about human consciousness. By mentioning the see, you can't win in this type of try.
Right. Book 2, baby. So I mean, I don't know. I think that, I mean, Steve Donahue's in the chat. I'm just throwing it out there, and that he keeps Steve, saying no scientist thinks like this or thinks like that. And I don't know who is saying what scientists are thinking like on this. I'm not talking about how scientists think.
No,
If it's me, I'm talking about you, Steve. I'm talking about the regular people who are not scientists, who who have embraced that as their belief system.
yeah,
All right.
50% or so of scientists might be atheists. We don't have the percentage, but certainly that's true. There's no
Right.
common set of thoughts or belief in the scientific community. There is more an individual approach and an individual way to see reality. Many
Right.
are spiritual and religious. Many scientists are not.
Right. And so even just working from the front, keep working from a more modern way back, if we can, there's a lot of spiritual, spiritual quotes, questings that we can call from modern scientists that develop things like the theory of quantum mechanics. What quantum mechanics is, Max Planck himself. I brought up in the first discussion, but in this section, is it Lemaitre?
Yeah.
French?
Lemaitre?
Is he French? Is it a French name? Right?
Lemaitre, the Big Bang guy?
Lemaitre?
Georges Lemaitre. He was a Catholic priest, right?
He was a Catholic priest, and this is the guy who developed the Big Bang Theory, which is, I mean, is there any modern scientific American or scientifically minded person who's not going to point to the Big Bang Theory as most likely true, at least? And the person that developed it, the scientist that developed that, is a Catholic priest, or was.
Oh, it's there is a stereotypical story in this, which is Galileo. A lot of even young people are taught that Mr. Galileo Galilei in Italy in his times was persecuted by the church because he was saying things that were scientifically correct, but the church, because he was retrograde and hated science, put him on house arrests and did all the terrible things to him. This version of history is very superficial, and it doesn't take in consideration the fact that for most of his life, Galileo worked with the church, worked thanks to the church, and worked, together with the church. In his latest years, I think, Dario, you showed a Galileo biography in your bookshelf.
Yes.
That would be interesting to explore. But just to make the point, he was maybe after he was 60 or 65. There it is, the Galilei's daughter, right?
Yes.
I haven't read it, but towards the end of his life, he was a celebrity, and he pretty much felt like talking, saying whatever he wanted. Some people mentioned that he should have written something in a certain way to not offend some part of the clergy. He didn't care. He wrote it, and the church reacted. From there, the big myth of Galileo, or the church, the enemy of science, came out, and he was flared up during the Enlightenment as well. So you need to go a little bit deeper. There is very easy to make these kind of stories black and white,
Right.
all stereotypes when they're not.
Yeah,
Right.
Ultimately, it's all about the political power, and it is. You can see it also if you look at the the kind of atheistic world order imposed in some societies, like in Soviet Union, for instance, or like in Yugoslavia, where I grew up. The whole thing has been just about power, about taking power from religious institutions, from church and so on, and placing it somewhere else. So even the people who are in the communist nobility, most of them are not atheists, really. Although they were speaking about it in that way, because that was the only way that was allowed to talk about. That was the only way to have a public position and so on. But as soon as the system was gone back in 1989, all of a sudden all of them are now Christians or Muslims or whatever, and in many cases just because it suits, but then they are basically moving in directions that will give them more political power. So I think that all these stories about that are very scientists are like this and these guys are like that and so on and so forth. I think it's oversimplifying. You need to see things in a right context, and like this Galileo story. And also, when I don't know exactly what Steve's questions was. I can't see chat here, but from the what scientists think or not think. I was sharing last time in our previous video my own experience. I have a scientific career behind me. That was my first career. I'm on my second right now. Maybe I'm on the third now as a booktuber.
Right.
But yeah. So in my first career as a scientist, I can tell you, it didn't really. The scientific approach, although it was my work and I was deeply passionate about it, it didn't give me any solace with regard to the questions I've been asking myself about my own being, about all the things that we are talking about here, understanding my place in the world and the reason for us being here and so on. It doesn't give any answers. There's always this uncertainty. So no amount of scientific exploration could give me these answers. I don't expect these answers to be given, honestly, because we really don't have the scientific method to that. But we need to explore it in different ways, like this discussion now.
Yeah, it's like you were saying before, both of you, in fact, Dario and Noah. It's the how and why. If we want to really summarize, and one example of this how and why is. Science, if it goes by itself without asking why, can go straight into what they're called biological, genetics, eugenics, etc., without asking why they're doing it, because something is possible to do. It might not necessarily be a good thing to do, and that's not an answer that science can give if it's or not.
And if you can do it, then you can do it.
Right. So
in science,
this, I know that it opens, a huge discussion, because then we would open the topic of bioethics. I don't want to go into that, but that's a perfect example of where science.
Well, even things like developing huge weapons that can just destroy the entire Earth or something. Like, why would you do that? Even just because you can, I think what you're getting at is very, very fundamental to this question, because there is a tendency for people, by what we've said before, the kind of to feel attacked if what they've already believed is not being touted as the whole story, and to feel like there's a defensiveness just by saying something like spirituality is essential for being human, right? Something like that. And I will say that I think I can simplify that very easily. and it might be an oversimplification, sure, but that science needs spirituality in order to have a conscience, and that spirituality needs science in order to not fall into superstition, pure superstition, right?
I love it.
That's what has come from,
I love that book.
and I
And
think it
I think,
does it very well, because that's those words work. We know what we're talking about with it. If you are in a very locked down spot, you can sit and blow holes through that just like you can anything else. But it still holds true that science without religion, we see what technology, the amazing technology that science has brought recently in human history, has done to uh, the world, the country at least, and the world as a whole. And then we have those same, these armchair scientists yelling for the real scientists to do something about it. Well, it's science doesn't have a conscience on its own, and spirituality, or religion, whatever tradition, or just spirituality on its own, has a tendency to uh, just be too much concerned with just the person and their experience and their own thing, the individual, just to be not looking at the broader implications, things like that. So it
Yeah.
falls into superstition.
Well, this is why it helps when trying to have a dialogue between people who see the world differently. Also helps a lot. Becoming friends, because once you become friend, you have that little bit of background on first of all the emotional connection. So you understand where somebody's coming from. You understand the individual history, and you better understand how a particular worldview has been shaped. I think that a crucial part of a healthy dialogue, aside from the respect and open-mindedness, is the the building friendship over time, over different discussions, and that's maybe the ideal approach to dialogue, because you cannot be everybody. Of course, there's no time.
Right. So just to finish it up, I'm going to open it up and let y'all can say something about it or whatever. But these kind of points is what we got to in our discussion, and I think that they're beautiful to show that there is a lot of similarity there as far as human beings are doing all this stuff that we're talking about. You know what I mean? Human beings are doing all this, and it is that science and spirituality both are concerned with growth and evolution of human beings and as a whole, and as cultures that maybe of course some cultures, some countries are further along than others, scientifically speaking, and some spiritually speaking as well, I would argue. But uh, the concern is for growth and evolution, and that science and spirituality both, even if you are antagonistic and want and fighting, what are you fighting for? You want people to believe what you believe. You think you got it right. You think that the world would benefit and humanity would benefit for all seeing it that way. Science and spirituality, both, and all aspects of it strive for inclusiveness, strive to be one, strive for humanity to unify. And I think that that's a very human drive.
It is. I think we made all the proper distinctions at the beginning of this chat when we said there's a distinction between fundamental, which does not strive for unity, and the more open to dialogue type of approach, which tends towards that type of unity. There's a lot of people who would argue that religion is has been always a reason to, make wars, to agree, to argue, to fight. But again, that's the fundamentalist approach.
Right.
But I think that fundamentalists also strive for unity, but they want to force us into unity, and that's
well. I
that,
mean,
that yeah.
if anybody could, they would. Anybody that's very staunch and hardcore about their spot and has a group and has a backing, whether it's big or small, and you feel like you have power, then you will try to exert that power. It's always wrong.
Yeah,
to
that's
do
honestly that's mystery to me. I don't understand that. It's basically forcing people to believe what you believe.
Well, you can't ever force anybody really to
Yeah,
believe
I
it.
don't care what people believe or not
You'll force
believe.
them to say that they believe, but you can't really force anybody to believe anything. You can't even force yourself to
Yeah.
believe anything. You can postulate it, and then you can live from that, and whether it resonates and that kind of thing keeps building within you, or whether it shows itself to be shadowy, smoky, and not of substance, and then you augment your beliefs. Nobody chooses to believe something and then they just believe it. um,
But
a lot of people do pay lip service to that kind of belief, but that is not real belief.
yeah, but then I think that this you could conclude it also. Now I don't know. I didn't really think this through. It just occurred to me that basically, fundamentalism is essentially about power, right? You
Power.
Right.
you want to, yeah. So it's
And
not
control.
yeah, it's not about the idea in itself. It is influencing other people's lives, how other people what they do to control them, and at the top of it, it always ends up in material gain for yourself, the guy on the top of the pyramid. That's quite interesting. Maybe overgeneralizing, but kinds of, it ends up there when you start thinking about it.
Yep. I mean, the biggest dull, like Homer Simpson dull moment of
Yeah.
the history of philosophy is, in my opinion, is when Nietzsche came out with his theory about the will of power. We are all driven fundamentally by the will of power. Duh, we all knew
Yeah. Right.
like
tell
2000.
tell us something we don't know.
Jesus Christ didn't know that. That's at the heart. Of course, I'm talking as a Christian, but as the heart of Christianity is this fundamental realization: we all are like monkeys trying to climb on top of each other. Just said, will of power is part of our nature. Okay, what do we want to do about it? And so there was nothing new in that, in my opinion. I'm sorry to mention Nietzsche because that would open up another avenue
Right.
from video.
I will say that philosophy, that avenue is the most direct means of self-knowledge, and therefore that is the best tool that we have, is philosophical inquiry into what the nature of being. And nowadays, that's a whole discussion in itself of where does that fit in. But I think that philosophical inquiry is kind of an umbrella that kind of encompasses all this stuff, especially from the individual's point of view. Speaking about people and generalizing and all that kind of stuff always takes us a little bit away from what we're really trying to get at, because all this kind of thing, the nature of belief, is all an individual pursuit and an individual path that you walk your entire life. If you have to sit and fight a belief just because somebody says something that doesn't that you don't think coincides with it, you got some work to do. Okay. Right when that kind of thing comes up in you, that's in you. That's not in me. If something like that comes up, and I'm more than willing to talk about things, that's why we're doing what we're doing. But I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm not here to put anybody on a certain kind of path. Guess what? You're on your path. You're on your path right now. And where you get, I think where we all get ultimately is a lot closer to each other than you might think.
That's the point of dialogue.
Yeah.
Very cool. We're at an hour. You guys want to throw in anything else?
No, just a thank you for anybody who's been brave enough to follow us until now.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, y'all. Have fun. Happy maybe Midrash. Catch you on the next one. Bye-bye,
Thanks, guys.
BookTube.
Thank you. Bye-bye.